One brazen insult on television ignited a national reckoning. What was initially political outrage became something no one anticipated. Forgiveness, healing, in a surprising moment that reduced millions to tears. You won't believe how a gesture of grace flipped everything on its head. Press play to get into it. It began like any other Fox News afternoon, until it didn't. On a hot live segment, liberal political commentator Jessica Tarlov took a surprise move. She leaned in on the panel and her voice cut through sharp and clear. Donald Trump is a psycho, a failed man, a sick president who is unfit for office. The studio came to a standstill. The host struggled to get back on track, but Jessica wasn't finished. He's corrupt to the core, she continued. America needs healing, not a madman yelling from a podium. Millions across the country were watching, mouths agape in real time. Social media erupted within seconds. Jessica Tarlov calls Trump a psycho was suddenly trending across the internet. In the backstage area, producers panicked. This wasn't in the script. Back in the White House, meanwhile, Trump sat in stunned silence as he watched the clip. His aides gazed at him expectantly, ready for some kind of reaction. But instead, he sedated. He merely spoke. Book me a live slot tonight. No teleprompters. His tone was tranquil, concentrated. Not a whisper of rage, just something harder, steadier. Jessica had believed she was making a stand. What she didn't know? She had just flung a match near a powder keg. In less than an hour, the clip had 7.5 million hits. Fox News rushed to mitigate the damage, but the moment was already going viral. Some lauded her courage. Others speculated that her career was over. Trump, however, disappeared from public view. Journalists gathered outside the White House, abuzz with questions. Would he answer back? Was there to be a press conference? Had Jessica stepped over the line? Within the Oval Office, Trump sat on a couch, sipping a cup of coffee, watching the video again. No screaming, no taunts, only studious concentration. He grabbed a notebook and started writing, line for line, every word chosen with care. Melania entered, worried. Are you all right? She asked. He gazed back at her, unruffled. Never better, he said. Then rising to his feet, he added, tonight I speak, and not just for me, for every forgotten American. The room fell silent. This wasn't about clapping back. This was going to be something more, a reckoning. An hour later, Fox News cut into programming with a breaking news alert. President Trump to speak live at 8 p.m. No script, no notes. Jessica's phone was ringing nonstop. She ignored calls for the most part, until one arrived from a top Fox executive. Jessica, the voice stated curtly, you awaked a sleeping lion. I spoke the truth, she responded, but confidence in her tone had dissipated. Well, prepare yourself. He's going to make his truth greater than yours. By 7:45 p.m., over 60 million people were stuck on their screens. TV, streaming apps, everywhere. Jessica sat alone in a Fox green room, watching nervously, sipping water, hands shaking. Then, right on cue, Trump stepped onto the stage. No teleprompter, no script, just the 47th president in a microphone. He looked straight into the camera and said, America, I was called a psycho today. He paused for a moment, then said quietly, but let me tell you what's actually sick. And with that, he began. What followed over the next 30 minutes would ripple across the country. Some would cry, others would see things in a whole new light. And Jessica, she would never forget what was about to unfold. Trump's voice stayed steady, almost gentle. No one likes being called names, he said, but I've been called worse. He stopped briefly, then continued. What actually breaks my heart is seeing how far people will go just to tear this country apart. He never mentioned Jessica's name once more. He did not need to. Instead, he highlighted elsewhere, on actual people. I've met mothers who've lost sons to fentanyl. I've hugged veterans who felt for decades like they were forgotten, and today, while I was doing that, someone on TV called me a psycho. Silence fell over homes throughout America. Backstage, Jessica looked down. Trump continued speaking, and his tone now bore a different shake. Not one of fury, but something much stronger. Call me what you want, but don't you ever call the people I fight for nothing. Throughout the nation, people listened deep. Veterans choked back tears. Single mothers nodded silently in kitchens. Truck drivers pulled to the side of the road just to soak it up. This was no political act. This was intimate. And in some way, his agony resonated with theirs. But as Trump spoke calmly and softly, in the background, a digital tempest was brewing. Online investigators began unearthing Jessica's past. Vintage clips made their way online. Remarks where she had ridiculed coal miners, scorned religious voters, and at one point referred to the Midwest as irrelevant. When Trump finished talking, Jessica Exposed was trending. A producer leaned into her in the green room and whispered, "It's bad, really bad." Jessica shook her head, nearly to herself. "I didn't mean it like that." But the damage was already done. Meanwhile, Trump's team also dropped a subtle bombshell, a series of photos from earlier in the day at an Ohio children's cancer hospital. One photo in particular stole hearts, a candid shot of Trump on his knees beside a small bald girl, tying her shoelace for her. In an instant like that, the picture of a sick, failed man dissolved. In its place, Americans found something they hadn't anticipated, a man who resembled humanity, kindness, reality. Jessica, who a mere few hours before had been the voice of truth, now appeared something entirely different, the face of harsh judgment, and even she could sense it. She sat in silence, her phone filled with missed calls and irritated messages, even from her own staff. She looked at herself in the studio mirror, her mascara streaked down her cheeks. I didn't mean to go that far," she whispered. A quiet young intern stood beside her, handing her a tissue. "He didn't deserve that," the intern whispered. "My mom cried hearing him tonight." Jessica's heart dropped. That line, that one simple line, cut deeper than all the headlines and hashtags. "My mom cried." In her haste to be audacious, Jessica had overlooked the most critical aspect, empathy. And Trump? He had not come back at her with flames. He had come back at her with kindness, power, and heart. That above all else reduced her words to triviality. She rose slowly and gazed out over the darkened studio. She had no idea if she'd just ended her own career. But the man she'd believed she'd ruin, he'd just walked through the storm and emerged radiant. By midnight, America wasn't sleeping. They were watching. Trump's speech had gone viral. TikTok videos, YouTube commentaries, Facebook videos, Twitter threads, all bearing one surprising word: respect. Individuals from all walks of life, young and old, black and white, military families, single parents, were perceiving something new in Trump. There was one video that stood out, a tearful woman from Michigan who was a one-time liberal voter who recorded herself crying. "I didn't vote for him," she said. "But that speech, that man is not a psycho. He's a father, a fighter, and I was wrong." It went viral in the course of an hour. Jessica's name was trending as well, but not for the reasons she had hoped. She was called cold, heartless. Some of them demanded an apology, but the harshest hit came from one of her former coworkers. "This wasn't journalism," they tweeted. "This was hate, wrapped up as commentary." Later in the evening, Jessica alone sat in her apartment, seeing it all happen silently. But the evening wasn't over yet, because Trump still had one more message to convey. The next morning, the White House press secretary tweeted a picture that shook the nation. It was a letter written by hand, by a 9-year-old Kentucky girl called Ellie. It said, "Dear Mr. President, my dad says you're not perfect, but you're very brave. I saw you cry on television when you spoke about the soldiers and the children in the hospital. You made me feel protected. Please don't let the nasty people scare you off. Love, Ellie." Jessica entered the office anticipating the worst. She thought her Fox career was done. But rather than being given a pink slip, she was greeted by something she never could have dreamed of. 3 Fox executives across from her, and a letter on the table printed. It was from the White House. It said, "She made a mistake, but this nation heals by restoring, not canceling." President Trump had specifically asked that she not be terminated. One of the executives stared her down. "Jessica, you're not let go," he told her softly. She blinked in shock. "You're being offered a second chance because he offered you one." Jessica gradually collapsed into a chair, dazed. Tears overflowed in her eyes. The very man she had attempted to bring down was now the reason she retained her employment. And the nation, it was starting to view him differently, one she had never thought possible. Deep within her, something altered. It wasn't political. It wasn't for the sake of saving face. It was respect, authentic, humbling, uni. The following morning, a video spread, something no one had anticipated. It wasn't from Trump's camp. It was from a firefighter in Pennsylvania, Jessica's father. He stood in front of the camera holding a worn photo of young Jessica in pigtails. "I've stayed quiet for years," he began, "but this moment, this needs truth." He didn't speak like a father defending his daughter. He spoke like a man who had seen both the fire of war and the fire of politics. "I don't always agree with President Trump," he admitted, "but referring to him as a psycho? That wasn't strength. That was pain, posing as power." He stopped, looked down. His voice dropped. "Jess, I taught you to fight clean. But last night, he was more gracious than you were." It touched a nerve. The video went viral. Jessica watched it from her car parked outside Fox headquarters. She couldn't stop crying, because this wasn't just a father scolding his daughter. This was something more. It was America, quietly correcting itself. Another storm was brewing inside the White House. Trump had ordered his lawyers to declassify a memo, a secret document that laid bare how media influence had been secretly bought and sold behind closed doors. The memo revealed how some TV producers, like Jessica's own, were being paid by political operatives to promote anti-Trump stories. That evening, Trump summoned a surprise press conference. He didn't shout. He didn't berate Jessica. He just read from the memo. "I don't mind criticism," he began, "but when the media becomes a weapon used against its own people, that's where I draw the line." The nation erupted in outrage, once more. Even longtime Democrats started asking tough questions. What else had they been kept in the dark about? In the wings of Fox, Jessica was petrified. This wasn't shame. This was a different sort of heartbreak. Understanding she hadn't merely gotten it wrong, she'd been used. As the sensationalized headlines blazed, something more subtle yet more profound arose out of a little town in Iowa. One mom named Laura shared an image of a letter she'd sent to the White House. "Dear President Trump, I have two boson. I have no time for politics, but last night I heard you speak, and I wept like a baby. You didn't meet hate with hate. You met it with heart, and you made me proud to be an American again." Trump read her letter publicly during a town hall in Ohio. He became choked up in the middle of it. Then he glared out at the audience and said, "Laura, if you're watching, you make America great again." The whole room stood applauding. No script, no spin, just truth, love, tears. In New York, Jessica sat in her apartment, watching it all happen. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "He's not who I thought he was." She hardly slept. By morning, pale golden light lay across the skyline. But inside, Jessica remained gray. She reached for her phone and texted the White House press office. "I need to apologize, in person." She sent it before fear could deter her. A few minutes later, her screen lit up with a response. "If your heart is true, the door is open." She took a deep breath and grabbed her coat, dashing out. Outside, there was a smattering of Trump supporters clustered around a food truck. Jessica steeled herself for the worst, perhaps taunts or bitter words. Instead, an older nurse named Ruth approached and offered her a hot cup of coffee. "Long night?" Ruth asked gently. Jessica nodded, eyes pricking with tears. Ruth smiled softly. "We all make mistakes, honey. What you do next is what counts." That gesture of kindness cut through her more forcefully than any insult could have. On the southbound highway to Washington, Jessica practiced her apology out loud, quivering. Green signs directed her to the Capitol. In the radio broadcasts, hosts played sound bites of Trump's hospital visit, the Iowa town hall, and Laura's letter. Their voices broke with something they never expected: admiration. And somewhere within Jessica, where bitterness previously resided, hope started to sprout. By noon, she'd be in the presence of the man she'd labeled as a psycho, and she'd be begging for his forgiveness. While that, President Trump was touring a rusted-out steel plant in Baltimore, years out of commission. Today it was opening again. Hard hats stood alongside makeshift camera equipment, anticipation hanging in the air. Some had been out of work for decades. Today, that changed. Trump strode down the floor, rust crumbling beneath his boots. He paused and said flatly, "People said this city was forgotten. I call it family." At the Baltimore factory, a tall man named Carlos, his eyes glassy with emotion, raised his hand. "Sir, they told us the plant was dead." Trump looked at him with quiet determination. "Then let's bring it back to life, together." And with that, he laid out the plan: federal incentives, private investment, and hands-on training programs to restore jobs and skills. Journalists gazed about, amazed, as employees hugged one another, some openly weeping. At home, citizens nationwide witnessed as greasy, overalls-clad blue-collar laborers applauded the president many had previously questioned. Hashtag Steelhearts trended globally. Jessica happened to be driving at the exact moment. Her car radio caught the live broadcast. She pulled to the side of the road, hands trembling, tears flowing. "He's giving them their lives back," she breathed. The term psycho, the slur she'd once hurled so recklessly, now seemed fragile, hollow, shattered like delicate glass. Miles away, as the address drew to a close, Trump concluded with a low, potent promise: "No American will be left behind, not on my watch." Late afternoon sunlight poured through the windows of the White House as Jessica arrived, heart pounding. An assistant escorted her down lengthy, hushed corridors flanked by portraits. Her hands were sweaty, her breathing constricted. Then, she stood in the Oval Office. President Trump behind the resolute desk, his tie relaxed after the factory visit. The Secret Service moved back, clearing a circle. Her voice broke. "Mr. President, He signaled with a light hand. "Jessica, sit." She sat, hardly able to make out over the din of her own heart. "I saw your dad's video," Trump stated softly. "He cares about you. So do many Americans, even those who don't agree with you." Tears streamed down her face. "I hurt people," she whispered. "I hurt you. I was wrong." Trump pulled out a drawer and pushed a creased piece of paper across the desk. It was Ellie's letter, the one from the 9-year-old girl, with her crayon writing still vibrant. "Read it," he encouraged. Jessica took it in her hands, shaking. As she read every line, the shame increased. But so did something else. Resolve. The kind you get when you can see at last. When she was done, Trump spoke softly. "America needs strong voices. Use yours to build, not break." She nodded, crying. Then he held out his hand. "Begin again, Jessica." She took it and shook, tears falling on the cuff of his suit. Flashbulbs snapped. A camera flashed. History, sealed in a handshake. Outside, journalists lingered, sensing something enormous had just transpired. But they could not have understood just how profoundly hearts had changed. Jessica emerged into the sunlight. She said nothing. She didn't need to. The expression in her eyes spoke volumes. No pride, no spin, just humility. In New York, the moment went viral. One photo, Jessica and Trump shaking hands, was posted more than 80 million times within 12 hours. But it wasn't only the picture that touched hearts. It was Jessica's silence. No tweets, no comments, no interviews. She just vanished from the public eye. And somehow that silence rang louder than any mic drop ever could. Talk show hosts got choked up on TV. Maybe we've been too hard on her, one conceded. Maybe it's time we all just listened. That evening, a message went online. Anonymous, but many thought it was from Jessica. "It takes more courage to say you were wrong than it does to act like you're always right. He taught me that. And for the first time in years, America feels like it's healing." In a tiny town in Arkansas, a third-grade teacher named Miss Helen interrupted her civics lesson. She searched up a news clip on the screen. "Today," she told her class, "we're going to learn about respect." The children sat silently, a brief video of Trump's hospital visit, Jessica's apology, and Ellie's letter. Even the most unruly children became quiet. One small girl raised her hand. President Trump didn't yell back. He forgave her. That's what my mom calls being a grown-up. A boy wiped his eyes. Miss Helen smiled. That's what a real leader does, she said. Not just win, but teach. Later, parents wrote about the dinner table talks. Mom, I believe I underestimated Trump. He assisted that ill child. He pardoned that woman. These were not voters. They were kids. And yet, they were perceiving the reality better than many grown-ups ever had. Something had changed, not only in the media, but in the heart of a nation. Meanwhile, in New York, the Fox News crew was getting ready for a big, understated moment. Jessica's return. No fanfare, no hype, just a chair, a camera, and a second chance. No flashy promos, no dramatic headlines, just one chair, hers, mildly set at the end of the Fox News panel. Everything halted as Jessica entered the studio. Conversations fell silent. The other host raised an eyebrow in surprise. She sat down, breathed in and out, and cleared her throat. I don't deserve to be here, she whispered. But I'm here, because the man I insulted believed I could be better. Silence. I called the president a psycho, she confessed. But then I saw him forgive me. I watched him comfort wounded soldiers, bring joy to sick children, and breathe life into towns everyone had forgotten. I don't agree with all his policies, she added, but I'll never again question his heart. Live, on air, tears streamed down her face. One by one, her fellow panelists, liberal and conservative, nodded. Not because they agreed with every word, but because they respected what it took to say it. America didn't need perfect people. It needed honest ones. And in that moment, it became clear to everyone watching, Donald Trump wasn't the man the media portrayed him to be. He was something else. In a tiny home just beyond Tulsa, Oklahoma, 82-year-old Vietnam veteran Bill Darnell sat on his couch witnessing Jessica's sobbing homecoming. His eyes remained fixed on the TV. He hadn't spoken much in years, not since his wife's passing, not since his son had last called. But there was something about this story, this surprise forgiveness, that struck something deep within him. He picked up an old, dusty notebook, a one he hadn't opened in more than a decade, and started writing. Dear President Trump, I've witnessed some pain over the years, but what I watched on TV yesterday, that brought healing. I don't cry easy. I did this time. Thanks for making the world understand that strength isn't loud. At times it's quiet, patient, full of grace. You gave that young woman a second chance. Now I want to give my son one too. He sent it with no return address. He didn't want attention. He wanted hope. Later on the same day, there was a knock on his door. It was his son. He was standing there clutching a printed photo of Trump and Jessica shaking hands. They didn't talk. They just hugged, for the first time in years. That Wednesday evening, in a small Baptist church in Atlanta, the usual midweek service began quietly. Just a few families, some hymns, a simple message. But something was different this time. The pastor stepped behind the pulpit and held up a printed article. Trump forgives Jessica Tarlov live on national TV. He paused and looked around. We've all been Jessica, haven't we? He said gently. Heads nodded. A few people wiped their eyes. We've spoken words we ought not, judged before we listened. But how many times do we witness a powerful person forgive without triumph? How many times do we see a person scorned, opt for mercy instead of revenge? A lady in the back, a widow with 3 children by herself, whispered, God used him. And the altar was suddenly filled. Not for politics, but for healing. A visiting teenager captured it all on a phone camera. Black, white, young, old, praying together. United in a tale of a president, a journalist, and a moment that seemed different. The video reached 1 million views in a matter of hours, not because it was dramatic, but because it was real. Out on the fringe of Ohio, a 10-year-old boy named Jacob watched every Trump update with his grandpa. Jacob's muscular dystrophy made it impossible for him to walk, but he dreamed big of one day standing up by himself, and he was interested in politics, not for the yelling or the teams, but for the sense that someone out there was advocating for individuals like him. Jacob didn't much care for the media, but there was something about Jessica's apology that moved something within him. He grabbed an inexpensive tablet and dictated a message with voice dictation. Dear Miss Jessica, I saw what you posted, and I saw you posting an apology. That's a big thing. President Trump forgave you. I believe that makes you both strong. I hope I get to meet you and him one day. Maybe we can just talk and perhaps laugh. Jessica heard about the post after someone had tagged her. She cried again. Then she immediately forwarded it to the White House. Within 10 minutes, Trump replied, "Get me this boy's address. I'm visiting tomorrow." Staff assumed he was joking. He wasn't. Before the sun even rose, he was already packing his suit jacket. The hum of Marine One echoed above the quiet streets of Jacobs, Ohio town. The sound rattled window panes. Neighbors stepped onto their porches, stunned. Moments later, a black motorcade turned onto the sleepy street where 10-year-old Jacob lived. His mother, Claire, clutched the handles of his wheelchair, her heart pounding. And then, out came President Donald Trump. No press, no popping cameras, just two Secret Service agents and a small, wrapped package. Jacob's eyes widened. Trump knelt down to eye level and grinned. "Heard you wanted to talk, champ." They discussed school, baseball cards, and courage. Jacob confessed he was afraid. His surgery was just a month away. Trump's face softened. Then he opened the box. Inside, a Yankees cap worn during a game, and similar to what Jacob's favorite pitcher has signed across it, and a tiny bronze wishbone on a chain. "My mother gave me this when I was your age," Trump said. "She explained to me, real strength is invisible, but it's everywhere." Jacob's lower lip trembled. "Will you pray for me?" he asked. Trump put the chain over the boy's head. "Every single night." Claire wept. A neighbor filmed the scene. By noon, it had been seen more than 30 million times, captioned only, not politics, just love. And all over America, folks' hearts steadied. In Manhattan, Jessica was rehearsing for her first primetime show since the scandal. Her producers provided cue cards. She shook her head. "Ask anything," she told them. "No fences." 20 million watched. Early in the show, Rachel played the clip, Trump presenting the wishbone necklace to Jacob. Jessica's eyes welled up. "What goes through your mind?" the host asked softly. Jessica breathed in. "My mom collected wishbones," she said quietly. "God can fix anything broken," they told her. She gazed downward, then upward. "I called that man a psycho, but today, he gave a broken child hope." She hesitated. "That's not crazy. That's grace." Cell phones buzzed everywhere. "Did you hear Jessica?" She rocked it. Then Jessica addressed the camera, tears streaming down her face. "Mr. President, if you're watching, thank you for showing me what true power means." The studio fell silent. Even the lighting tech wiped his eyes. For the first time in years, pundits left and right shared the same thing, respect. And within Jessica, peace grew. A kindness she hadn't felt since her mother died. Night descended. Candlelight spread across cities and towns. No political signs, just gentle light, hand-scrawled placards. "Heal our nation. Forgive like 47. Just hope." They were colors on one flag. Thousands of people stood before the Lincoln Memorial in Washington. Families, friends, strangers, all united in the warm June air. A soft hymn swelled through the mass of people. Journalists leaned in and mouthed, "We haven't witnessed such unity in decades." Then quietly Trump arrived with Melania. No stage, no microphone, only folded hands and tear-stained eyes. He gazed out at the vast expanse of lights and whispered hardly above a whisper, "America isn't perfect, but tonight shows she's still beautiful." Then wordlessly, he motioned Jessica, standing ready just off frame, come to his side. She walked up, candle trembling. They bowed their heads in tandem. A veteran approached and started singing Amazing Grace. Voices broke, candles danced, strangers hugged. Even veteran reporters wept until their shoulders convulsed. A drone hovered overhead, recording the scene. A river of light glowing along the reflecting pool. The image went around the globe. a people opting for mercy over resentment. And in that soft light, a single truth shone brighter than all the cameras. Love, when it is allowed room, can still redefine history. Trump's phone rang. A live video popped up. It was Jacob, waving in his living room. The wishbone necklace proudly encircled his neck. "Good morning, Mr. President," Jacob beamed. "Surgery's in 2 hours. I'm brave because of you." Trump smiled gently. "You're brave because you're you, champ." He turned to Jessica. "Let's send him off right." At dawn, the National Mall radiated pink and gold. Wax puddles shimmered with the dying candles of the night. Journalists hushed that the crowd had lingered through the night, singing Amazing Grace under the stars. Trump and Jessica sat together on the chilly marble steps inside the Lincoln Memorial. Just two of them. No speeches, no spotlights. They drank warm coffee from the same thermos Ruth, the nurse, had given Jessica days before. Trump spoke at last. "Grace costs nothing," he said, "yet it buys everything." Jessica gazed down, eyes glistening. "I thought power was volume," she said. "You taught me it's mercy." Together, they recorded a quick 30-second video, cheering Jacob on. The clip exploded across social media. Tens of thousands joined in, posting their own encouragements. In that moment, the nation's heartbeat matched a 10-year-old boy's. Red and blue weren't sides anymore. As Jacob was rolled into surgery, individuals formed a crowd outside the hospital. Radios hummed with live reportage from the surgical staff. Bill, the Vietnam veteran, and his son were present as well, carrying a hand-painted sign. "Stand strong, Jacob." At noon, Trump ascended to the roof of the White House in private. He bowed his head. Jessica, brought in by Melania, stood beside him. Far down, D.C. traffic came to a standstill. Car horns sounded in solidarity. Then, 12 church bells sounded out from Georgetown. A silent prayer, a ringing hope, a nation recalling who it might be. Life has a way of surprising us now and then, not with successes so dramatic or conclusions so tidy, but with small moments that awaken something more. We all have seasons when we speak too loudly, feel too little, or forget what matters most. But occasionally, someone teaches us a way defined by forgiveness, not resentment, by hearing, not screaming. Perhaps that's what lingers with us in the end. Not who won the fight, but who extended their hand first, who forgave, who exercised kindness when they didn't have to. Stories like these remind us that change does not necessarily come from power, but from the bravery to be human. And perhaps just maybe, there's still space in this world for healing.